afternoon. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to today's July 27th, 2026 regular meeting of the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. Before beginning today's meeting, I'd like to state that our board is dedicated to providing safe, dependable, and affordable supply of water now and into the future. At this time, we would like to share a brief recording with reminders on public participation, as well as virtual meeting regulations for board members as required by law.
Materials for this meeting under HRS Section 92-7.5 are accessible at boardofwatersupply.com/boardmeetings. The public may attend this meeting in person at the BWS Public Service Building, located at 630 South Beretania Street. The public may also view a live stream of today's meeting on our website at boardofwatersupply.com/live. We have been accepting written or oral testimony for today's meeting. Instructions and an online submittal form are available at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. The deadline to submit advanced written testimony has passed. Testimony received by noon today have been distributed to the board members. We will continue to accept written testimony today through our online form. Oral testimony in person or remotely will be accepted during today's meeting. To facilitate as much in-person and remote testimony as reasonably possible during the time allotted, pre-registration and submittal of a written version of testimony at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony is strongly encouraged. To testify in person, please register using our online form or come to the Public Service Building at 630 South Beretania Street. We have a representative in the lobby to provide intake and further instructions. To request to testify remotely, please complete the online form at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. Requesters will receive an email containing links and instructions to join the Zoom session. Testifiers will have 2 minutes to state their position. A timekeeper will alert testifiers when there is 1 minute remaining. Once the 2 minutes are up, please summarize to allow time for questions from the board. Then, make room for the next testifier. Board members attending any board meeting remotely must be visible to the public to be considered present and meet quorum guidelines. Board members participating remotely must also disclose their location and anyone present at their location during roll call. Meeting participants who are calling or video conferencing in, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you have a question, comment, or wish to enter or second a motion on an action item, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself before continuing to speak. If you encounter technical issues during today's meeting, please use the Zoom chat to send a direct message to our support team. Their names are listed in the message to all participants. To open the chat window, please click on the text bubble icon on the Zoom toolbar.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's take a moment to take a roll call of the board members. When I call your name, please say aye. And if attending remotely, make the appropriate disclosures. I don't believe we have any virtual participation today. So in the room with me today are the following: Vice Chair Jonathan Kaneshiro, Board Member Natlehu Anthony,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Lapola,
Aye.
Board Member Darian Shutt.
Aye.
We leave absent today are board members Edwin Sniffen and Jean Albano. Also in the room with us today are Manager Ernie Lau,
Aloha.
Deputy Manager Erwin Kawata,
Here.
Board Secretary Joy Cruz-Achiu,
Here.
Manager Secretary Kimberly Kauai, and Information Specialist Wayne Maria.
Here.
Joining us in the room today, I believe, is City and County Corporation Counsel Jeff Lau,
Here.
and remotely Jessica Wong.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for being here. There's a lot of attendance today. I assume that's because people want to see how badly I screw this thing up as chair. But we'll let you all vote on that after the fact. All right, we have 3 items on the action agenda today, so we'll get right to that. First, our first action item is approval of the minutes of the public hearing and regular meeting held on June 22nd, 2026. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Hearing none, would you like to call for a roll call?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Jonathan Kaneshiro,
Aye.
Board Member Natlehu Anthony,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Lapola,
Aye.
Board Member Darian Chan,
Aye.
and Chair Lance Gordon.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 5 ayes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The second item on our action agenda, adoption of resolution number 1018-2026, reimbursement of capital expenditures from the proceeds of indebtedness. Chair recognizes Leanne Matsumoto.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. We recommend adoption of Resolution 1018-2026, declaring the official intent of the Board of Water Supply of the City and County of Honolulu to reimburse itself for certain capital expenditures from the proceeds of indebtedness. The resolution establishes the time limit for reimbursement of capital expenditures at 18 months. This brings the Board of Water Supply into compliance with Section 1.150 of the U.S. Treasury Regulations and does not bind the board to make expenditures, incur any indebtedness, or proceed with the project. The resolution establishes a limit of $266,810,000 and attaches the fiscal year 26 capital improvement program. So this resolution is something that we come to the board yearly after the capital improvement project budget is approved. So this just gives us the flexibility to, although projects are not budgeted under the improvement fund, if we want to later on issue bonds and reimburse our operating funds for those projects if they fall under the guidelines of the bond projects. Any questions?
Okay, the resolution was included in your board materials. Are there any questions at this time? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the adoption of the resolution.
So
We have a motion. Is there a second?
aye.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, could you take a roll, please?
Chair, Vice Chair Jonathan Panachero,
Aye.
Board Member Nalepo Anthony,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Nakula,
Aye.
Board Member Darian Chan,
Aye.
and Chair Lance Gordon.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 5 ayes.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that very much. Item number 3 on our action agenda is adoption of resolution number 1019-2026 for the WIFIA project water system revenue loan for the Kailailoa Seawater Desalination Facility project. Chair recognizes Leanne Matsumoto and I think Darren Hodge.
So Darren is online. We also have Devin Brennan from ORIC that will do a presentation and answer questions. We recommend the adoption of Resolution 1019-2026 for the WIFIA project water system revenue loan for the Kailailoa Seawater Desalination Facility project. So we've been in extensive negotiations with US EPA, which is the WIFIA lender. The board has determined to enter into a WIFIA loan agreement to be dated on or about August 5th, 2026. The WIFIA lender is to finance eligible costs relating to planning, design, and construction of the Kailailoa Seawater Desalination Facility project, a seawater reverse osmosis facility. The WIFIA lender has agreed to take a junior and subordinate lien for the repayment of the loan. It will make to the board in the amount not to exceed $108,612,012. The WIFIA resolution will pledge the net revenues of the water system as a security for the payment of the debt service on the WIFIA loan, except that such pledge for the WIFIA loan will be subordinate to the Resolution 717-2001, adopted April 26, 2001 for the bonds. And it will be in parity to the pledge made to the State of Hawaii Department of Health under Resolution 741-2004, adopted by the board on February 23rd, 2004, for the SRF resolution. And in parity to the revolving credit agreement dated July 8th, 2026. So Darren Hodge will be presenting. He has a presentation, and we also have a final resolution. When we first submitted our documents, it was in draft. there were two major areas that were addressed with EPA, and Darren will go over those.
So starting on slide 2, I'm just going to get an overview of the project before we jump into the details. So the desal project is anticipated to be funded by a variety of sources. And it's a combination right now of ARPA funding, USBR funding, as well as impact fees and cash that BWS has on hand. But the primary funding mechanism right now is a WIFIA loan. As Leanne mentioned, we're anticipating the WIFIA loan to be up to $108.6 million. And we'll talk about how we arrived at this figure, but the total funding sources which are available to us to fund is currently approximately $221.8 million. Now, the important part about the WIFIA loan is that's really a flexible source of financing, and we anticipate using this as one of our major sources of funding. As Leanne mentioned, we've been in negotiations with the EPA for quite some time now, and we're currently in the final phase of the WIFIA loan process. And most of this process has involved negotiating the loan agreement terms with EPA, their lawyers, BWS's legal counsel, PFM. We've all been working to make sure that the loan agreement is in final form and consistent with both the parity and senior lien terms and covenants. And so right now we're nearing the very end of the process and hoping to, assuming we get approval tonight, to execute the loan agreement here relatively shortly. Right now, I want to talk about what are some of the benefits of WIFIA loans. So WIFIA loans are able to fund 49% of eligible project cost. And eligible project costs are fairly broad in their definition under the WIFIA loan handbook. So they're defined to be project cost, issuance expenses, as well as interest on interim financing. And one of the key aspects of the loan negotiation process is that early on in the process, we were able to talk to EPA and include a fairly substantial amount of contingency into the definition of eligible project cost. In fact, EPA was willing to allow us a 30% contingency when we're sizing the WIFIA loan. So what this means is that when you see that $221 million project or eligible project cost figure, that includes 30% contingency, which increases that number so that we're taking 49% of a higher eligible project cost number. That doesn't mean that we have to draw the entire $108 million of the WIFIA loan. It just provides us the flexibility to draw up to that amount. So it's very flexible in that way. One of the other benefits of WIFIA is that we only draw on the WIFIA loan on an as-needed basis. So unlike bonds where we sell the bonds and we start paying interest immediately, on a WIFIA loan, we draw it as we need the funds. And as such, we're only paying interest on the amounts that we've drawn. So it's a very efficient financing mechanism. And we also don't have to draw the entire amount of the loan, as I mentioned previously. Now, from an interest rate perspective, the interest rate on WIFIA loans is set at the comparable U.S. Treasury rate plus 1 basis point. Right now, that rate's about a 5.15%, which compared against a taxable alternative, we're actually saving money by using a WIFIA loan in the current market. And as Leanne mentioned, the other and final benefit I'll hit on here is that EPA is willing to accept a subordinate lien at no additional premium or interest rate. Normally, if we were to sell public bonds, selling public bonds on a subordinate lien, we might incur an interest rate premium, but EPA is a very flexible lender and willing to accept a subordinate lien at no additional interest rate. So just as important as the benefits is understanding the considerations of WIFIA loans. And one of the considerations with WIFIA loans is that we do have ongoing reporting requirements to EPA. And that really takes the form of two types of reporting. The first is quarterly construction reports. EPA requires that we submit on a quarterly basis updates to the status of construction, substantial completion date, as well as the project cost. They want to keep on track understanding how we're proceeding based off our projected schedule. And then on an annual basis, after our fiscal year end, we have 180 extendable up to 270 days to provide financial information as well as an updated long-term financial planning model. Now, I talked about substantial completion because there's a very important date that we want to talk about and that we're very cognizant of. there's a substantial completion date, expected substantial completion in the loan agreement. And based off that, there's a development default date that typically is about 18 to 24 months after the substantial completion date. The importance of the development default date is that if we don't reach substantial completion by the development default date, technically under the documents, EPA has the ability to default the loan, which would make all outstanding draws and payments immediately due and payable. Now, it's worth noting that to date, as far as I know, EPA has not defaulted a borrower based off the development default date. And we've actually been involved in situations where EPA has been amenable to amending the substantial completion and development default date, just given the current environment with construction projects and delays related to tariffs, supply chain issues, et cetera. So there's no guarantee that they will be flexible with that, but to date, they have been flexible with regards to these provisions. The other item that we're very cognizant of is where are the availability of funds in terms of a government shutdown. So in the event of a government shutdown, based off our conversations with EPA, WIFIA funding is not necessarily guaranteed or protected. However, to date, they have not failed to fund a loan draw due to government shutdown. So even during certain government shutdowns, they've still been able to provide funding to borrowers as they've requested. Next slide, please. So with regards to the WIFIA loan agreement, there's a lot of terms and provisions that govern the repayment of the WIFIA loan that the entire financing team reviewed and negotiated with EPA. And I just want to talk through some of these. The first is the additional bonds test. The additional bonds test is a provision that lenders require, which provide that before issuing new money debt, we have to meet certain debt service coverages. I talked about the development default date, why that's important. The disbursement schedule is the next one. Within the loan agreement, we have a disbursement schedule. The disbursement schedule outlines the fastest by which we can draw funds. We can always draw funds slower than what's in the disbursement schedule. We just can't draw any faster. We talked about the expected substantial completion date. The interest rate, as I mentioned, it's the 1 basis point over the comparable U.S. Treasury. We also have a loan repayment schedule that is fairly conservative. For the most part, it's level debt service after we hit our expected substantial completion date. Prepayment of WIFIA loans is fairly flexible. These loans are prepayable at any time in full. And on partial prepayments, those are prepayable at any time on a pro rata basis. And then finally, we have our rate covenant, which is very similar to the other bonds and obligations that BWS enters into. And that's simply a test that BWS has to meet on an annual basis, ensuring that our net revenues exceed a minimum debt service coverage ratio. So what slide 7 shows is essentially the projected future debt service payments on the WIFIA loan. So right now we're targeting a closing date next month in August of 26. Our first interest payment, if we are to draw on the loan, is currently July 1st, 2027. However, there's a big caveat there. You might remember that we came to you and you approved a revolving line of credit, which we're anticipating using to pay quite a few of these costs. And so it's very likely that we won't actually draw on the WIFIA loan prior to that initial interest payment date. And so to the extent that we don't have a draw prior to July 1st, 2027, we will not make an interest payment date at that time. Now, in terms of the loan amortization, the way that we've structured this is we anticipate having principal payments beginning 2030, going through 2056. The reason that we started our principal payments July of 2030 is because we're currently, we negotiated an expected substantial completion date of 2029. And so we wanted to give ourselves some flexibility to not start amortizing the loan until the project had reached substantial completion. And then currently, at least as of July 8th of this year, the loan rate was about 5.06%. Today, it'd be closer to 5.12 to 5.14%. And then below what we've shown in this table here is just what the overall debt service profile of BWS will look like, assuming the WIFIA loan is approved tonight and once we've closed on it. And you can see Debt service is pretty conservatively structured, and debt service will increase slightly beginning 2028. But then over time, as we start paying off our senior lien debt, our debt service will continue to decline as it's currently forecasted. So with that, that concludes my prepared remarks, and I'll turn it back to Leanne.
Thank you, Darren. Does anybody have questions? We also have Devin Brennan from ORIC on the legal side. If you have any questions.
Questions or comments based on the presentation? Board members?
Darren, do you think you could go over the two areas in the resolution? I think that was on page 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll actually turn it over to Devin to go through those.
Sure, thank you, Darren. And I don't know if we can put it up on the screen, but the negotiations with EPA over the resolution and the WIFIA loan agreement were ongoing, and we wanted to bring the terms that they were offering closer to what BWS already has in its existing first lien bond resolution and its existing SRF loan resolution. And EPA had been sort of stuck on some language in the definition of debt service that wasn't identical with the way in which we wanted the debt service to be calculated for purposes of that additional bonds test that Darren mentioned, and for purposes of that rate covenant test that Darren mentioned. And so in the definition of debt service, new language was added. We had the EPA agree to add new language that indicates that the aggregate amounts determined for purposes of these calculations will be determined as they are determined in those other resolutions. So I can't see the debt service definition yet on my screen, but if folks, there we go. And then just on page 5, one page below that, it's the little Romanet in debt service 2 there. There we go. So this right there at the top of the page, there's Roman numeral 2. That clause was added, and that provides that the calculations that are going to be done under this WIFIA loan resolution are going to be done in a manner similar to those done in the existing first lien bond resolution and the existing SRF resolution. So calculations that are specified in those resolutions for other purposes such as ABT or the rate covenant, as Darren mentioned. That was the first sort of major substantive disagreement that we resolved since this had been posted. Are there any questions on that one before I move to the second one?
Any questions? Move forward, please.
Okay, so section 802, which is I think somewhere around page 20. There we go. So in section 802, there were actually a number of changes that were made here, but the reason for those changes is that an identical section 802 also appears in the SRF loan resolution and in the first lien bond resolution. And so EPA had been wanting us to delete a number of provisions here that provide that subordinate lien obligations are all paid on parity with one another, meaning that if there were some sort of default or problem, that the SRF loans, the revolving line of credit, and the WIFIA loan would all be paid equally as the revenues come down there. EPA had wanted that deleted. We did not delete that. What we did add for their purposes was this language that says that for the avoidance of doubt, those payments are made from the subordinate obligation fund and not the WIFIA revenue fund. The subordinate obligation fund is the fund that's established under the first bond resolution and provides for parity payments to all those subordinate obligations I just mentioned. The WIFIA revenue fund is something that's held within that's really just for payment of WIFIA once the revenues get down there. And so those were the two major substantive areas of disagreement that we had left. I'll pause for questions on the second one too, but we were able to negotiate both of those favorably on behalf of the board and resolve those in a way that works with the board's existing debt.
All right. Any further questions with regards to the updated resolution?
Chair, if I could
Yes.
make a few comments. I just first of all want to thank the our BWS team, finance division led by Leanne and Kaliko, and their their other members of their team and our consultants. PFM was our financial consultant on this. Oric was our counsel helping us. And I do want to also recognize our Water Resources Division, Barry, in actually doing this project. This will be the first WIFIA loan we execute between the Board of Water Supply and the US EPA in the state of Hawaii's history. No other entity, other water utility in the state of Hawaii has ever done this. And it's done for projects that are $20 million or over, so larger projects. It has flexible terms that are to our advantage. We don't need to draw on it until, is it, Darren, 5 years after completion of the project, substantial completion?
Correct. We need to draw on it by the time the project is complete, but we won't actually have to start repaying it until a little bit later. But yes, you're correct.
And until we make that first draw, Darren, we have EPA has been flexible in terms of the rates that we would be locked in at if the rates were to get better.
That's correct. When we close the WIFIA loan, our rate is locked, so it will never get worse than that. EPA has been amenable to, there's a provision where at their discretion, they can allow for a one-time refinancing if rates decrease. And so that's part of the strategy of using the revolving line of credit to delay drawing on the WIFIA loan, because in order to effectuate that one-time refinancing, one of the provisions is the loan has to remain undrawn.
So I just want to say this is all part of our efforts with the board and the department to look at different ways to finance our projects, to meet the needs of our customers and try to be as cost effective for our customers that we provide the important service to. So I just want to thank the board's support in this and also thank my staff for the hard work on it. I met with EPA twice on this. They're really anxious to get this done. In fact, if it was possible, they would have actually had the acting regional administrator fly down here for an in-person press conference. But it looks like they're going to wait for the head of the EPA, Administrator Lee Zeldin, to sign off on this loan. And then they'll schedule kind of a joint press release. It might have to be virtual, but I just want to also recognize the EPA staff that worked on this. They worked really hard on this for a few years now. And everybody, put their shoulder to the wheel, and it's a successful loan from the EPA.
Just more curious than anything else, but given kind of current schedule, construction schedules, development schedule, et cetera, when do we anticipate making our first draw on this? No.
I think construction is going to start October 2027.
Everybody turns to Barry.
So we don't expect to draw on it at that time. We're going to use our USBR and our Special X funds first. And then once that's exhausted, we do have the option. We'll take a look at the rate compared to what our line of credit is. We might use the line of credit at that time and still hold off on the WIFIA draw.
I do want to recognize too the other sources of funds for this desalination project, which is really important important step to diversify our water resources, which is now entirely groundwater based for drinking water. It's the presence of federal funds from the USBR, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, about $19 million, and from the American Rescue Plan from the COVID times, $25 million. These are just grants that we don't need to repay. So this is actually a golden opportunity for our community to have its first seawater desalination facility with a substantial amount of federal dollars helping to buy down the cost to our customers. So I'll just stop there.
Any other questions? Very much appreciate the presentation, as well as all the hard work for staff and everybody else. Building a capital stack is very similar to what's done in the private sector, having to get pretty creative with your dollars.
Diversification.
Appreciate it very much. Okay. If there aren't any other questions, the chair recognizes a motion to approve this item, let me make sure that it's read appropriately so we don't get messed up. So this would be adoption of resolution number 1019-2026 for the Whitfield Project Water System Revenue Loan for Kalailoa Seawater Desalination Facility Project. Chair entertains a motion to approve. So moved. Thank you for your courage, Nalehu. Is there a second? Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, would you please take a roll call?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair Jonathan Panachiro,
Aye.
Board Member Nalehu Anthony,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Latola,
Aye.
Board Member Darian Chad,
Aye.
and Chair Lance Wolf.
Aye.
Chair, motion passing with covenant.
Thank you very much and congratulations.
Mahalo.
In this case, maybe they should spend it all in one place.
Well, they gotta check the interest rate, Riley. It's just spend when you need to
We'll
spend.
watch the rates.
Yeah,
carefully.
when you get a favorable wind, go like hell.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, very good. I believe now we'll move on to items for information. We have three of those items. First is an update on the Board of Water Supply's response to potential impacts of the Red Hill fuel contamination. Chair recognizes Erwin Kua.
Thank you, Chair, members. Good afternoon.
We don't usually get the Erwin Kawata, but this is very, very nice.
He'll do a good job.
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, Chair and members. Back in June of 16, we sent a letter to the Department of Health and the US EPA Region 9 to describe some of what we are seeing in the different PFAS detections, both in the navies as well as the board's monitor wells, as well as our production wells. So a monitor well is essentially a test well. It's used to collect information from the environment. And so what I'd like to do is brief you on the contents of that particular letter. And I want to start with just this particular map. And this map really shows, I think everyone is very familiar with this area. This is the Red Hill fuel facility boundary line here. And all of the yellow highlights is places where PFAS has been detected or it has been found to be present. And most of it within this area here is the Navy's monitor wells. And you can see on this graph, there's a lot of those wells that show this positive detection for PFAS. Also, beyond that, we're also seeing detections of PFAS at our Halava shaft to the northwest. We're also seeing, which is currently closed, we also see PFAS at our Halava wells to the west. Where as far over even to our Camilo wells, we're seeing PFAS detections. There have been also detections in the Navy's IAEA Halava shaft here to the west, including other monitor wells that the Navy has installed here over to the south. Some of our monitor wells, we're also seeing it here at the animal quarantine station, at the Halava District Park, and over at the Moanalua Golf Course. And what's interesting here is to see is that you see all of these PFAS detections here at the Red Hill facility, and then to the west, we're seeing detections in various monitor wells as well as our own production wells. Now, this westward movement is consistent with what's currently known to be the groundwater direction, moving from the Red Hill area to the west. PFAS being dissolved in water, it can move with that water in that particular direction. There's also information, or we also have current understanding that the water can move from the Red Hill facility to the northwest towards Halava shaft. And so what we're seeing is that these detections are consistent with our current understanding of groundwater flow and in terms of the westward movement, including the northwest. The types of PFAS also being detected are quite varied. And we see similarities between the types of PFAS that's being detected at the Red Hill facility, including what we're seeing in our own wells, as well as our monitor wells. So there's widespread occurrence in our letter that we're writing to EPA. and that there's similar types of PFAS that's being detected both at the Red Hill or in the Navy's monitor wells, as well as our own production wells and monitor wells. And that this presence in the westerly and northwesterly direction are really consistent with what's current understanding of groundwater flow direction in this particular area. Now, the similarity is also related to, again, the direction of the groundwater flow and this groundwater flow model, and some of the importance that we've been putting in terms of the importance of having that model really be investigated, developed, and shared with us in terms of what the Navy is working on is critical to understanding the degree and the extent of this presence of this contamination within this particular area. The types of PFAS are also consistent with the types that have been used in firefighting foams, both at the Navy, that the Navy has been using at their particular facility. And if you think about the facility itself, it is to our knowledge, it is the largest industrial activity that has been in this particular area. We're not aware of any other activity that's equal to or surpasses what the Navy has in terms of potential source of this particular contamination. This is actually what is called a particle track model. It's generated by a groundwater model that was developed by the Navy. And what it really shows is, starting from the tanks here on the right side of the page, based on certain conditions of wells that are pumping, certain groundwater flow that's occurring within the area, where does this particle or what particular potential paths that the particles could take? And all these multiple lines here are different conditions that the model actually generated. And for that reason, you'll see multiple kinds of lines. But what's common here is that you'll see the lines going to the northwest here towards the lava shaft. You also see the lines consistently going towards the west, towards our wells, both at Halava wells, Ea, and Kamilo wells. And so if you think about the picture we saw previously with all those yellow highlights, those yellow highlights are really consistent with where these particle lines are present. And you see some relationship between what is being detected and, of course, a groundwater model that's supposed to really help us understand really truly how the groundwater is moving in this particular area. When we actually put the names of our particular wells, you can see that these particle tracks really target a lava shaft, all of our wells, our Halava and our Kamilo wells as well. So in this letter, we really affirm that there needs to be more data that's collected by the Navy. There needs to be more information so that we can better understand and better correlate what we're observing with all of the work that's being done in terms of groundwater modeling and understanding what happens to PFAS as it moves through the environment. We have repeatedly asked the regulatory agencies and the Navy to collect more data, and they have repeatedly said that the additional information is not necessary. But interestingly, EPA has written to the Navy over the past 2 years, multiple times, asking them to really collect more information and the importance of that additional data that needs to be collected. So in terms of this detections and how it affects how our current understanding of the contamination in the area, really more data is absolutely essential. And so that we can better understand what is the impact to our existing wells in this area and what effect additional pumping in this area can have on PFAS detections going forward. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Question, please.
Can you guys go back to the last particle track? Yeah, that was one. You know, when we look at this, like,
Yes,
is the Halava shaft one assuming that it's pumping?
this particle track was based on Halava shaft pumping. That's correct.
And we've been off since what, December of 21, right?
Correct.
And the PFAS number is still elevating, right? Even not pumping.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It's natural flow.
so this is interesting. This is a natural flow. It's like this, the pumping is like sucking water out of the bowl, but there's also,
Pumping with halava chef would make it worse.
right.
That's right.
But even under natural flow conditions, PFAS is, and again, we suspect, we don't, we were waiting for the EPA and Navy, EPA and Department of Health to respond, that the natural flow path is from the Red Hill tanks toward our halava shaft to the northwest.
Halava wells is also off, and we're seeing detections in halava wells.
Yeah.
Also.
Natural flow.
That's natural flow.
You know, that last part about in the bullets, like there's still this beef about whether or not there's this causality of like, did the 1,200 gallons of AFFF that they dumped into the environment, is that really the cause of this PFAS that we're seeing localized in that area? I mean, at this point though, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it matters, but
Yes, it's cumulative. It also has past releases.
right.
So past releases contribute to that. That's in the Vado zone or in the unsaturated rock. Certainly what has happened more recently is going to have an influence on it.
And we don't know if, you know, AFFF, the firefighting foam, aqueous film forming foam was the only thing they used,
Yeah.
which at least they've admitted it's gone back to the 60s when they had AFFF at Red Hill. But other substances, cleaning agents, other things, we don't know if they could contain PFAS also.
I guess my point here is like,
Yeah.
if we're gonna hit the 4 parts per trillion threshold at some point, then we are forced to act. And there's clearly, we want to ascertain what the input was to understand what the potential hazard is, but we're gonna be forced to act one way or another.
Exactly. If we ever wanted to turn, I don't advocate turning on halava shaft because you can see what happens if we turn it on. The lines all lead toward halava shaft further across the valley more effectively. But halava shaft would require a PFAS treatment system at the minimum right now.
Yeah.
And that would be probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Halava wells would require treatment. We're already putting in, we have a temporary treatment system installed at Kalamila wells.
Yeah.
And we're planning for permanent treatment at Kalamila wells and also to the bottom Mauna Loa wells. Aaron, you want to point out there? And also our Pro City shaft or for PFAS.
And to be clear, that's the other two treatment facilities are gonna be the military ones at Red Hill and at IA.
In this area, their IA halava shaft, or put your laser pointer in the IA halava shaft. They also have a temporary water treatment system there. They have PFAS detections and also petroleum. The other location for a system going in, which they completed their environmental assessment, was for Red Hill shaft there. And the estimated costs we've heard from Congress is around $505 million.
Right. Yeah, it would be great to understand just what the curve of all this is at some point, like what the rate of change is even at these static wells, to understand how much time we have.
Yeah, Erwin, can you go back to the map showing the PFAS detections? In these detections, you know, vary from low levels that are estimated all the way up to high levels. But this thing that surprised me was PFAS detections at the Mauna Loa golf course. This is in Mauna Loa Valley. We kind of assumed that the flow was going to go all the way to the northwest and contamination would move there. But to the south, Site S is our monitor weather we put in by the golf course. And thank you to the golf course to allow us to do that. Pretty substantial PFOS detections. What was it, 15, 16 parts per trillion? The drinking water standard currently is at 4 parts per trillion. And also our Mauna Loa wells all the way to the south. But you'll notice that they have PFAS detections across the Mauna Loa freeway, NMW 32. Then all the way out to the west too. And then we recently took a sample from a well that we haven't used for years. Kaunohi Wells Two. Where is that located around on this map?
Beyond here, wait, it's off the page.
It's off the page. Positive for the type of PFAS too, in that.
To add to that, the other thing about this particular picture that I have a question on is that if you look at on the Navy's property, just about every one of those wells has a PFAS detection. The question I have is, does it look like that off their property too? And that's one of the reasons why we've been advocating for a long time, that there needs to be more monitoring wells.
Yeah.
So that you can actually collect those samples and understand whether there is presence or absence. Because if there is presence, you start pumping a well, that can have an effect on where that PFAS goes in terms of extending it beyond where you're seeing it today.
I also want to acknowledge our state legislature. Through their efforts, they have given us $12 million to drill monitor wells and also develop replacement wells in this area. So they, along with Board of Water Supply funds, the support of this board, using BWS funds and state funds, we've added to the monitor well network. And lo and behold, the monitor wells that we put in site S is down below right there. The animal quarantine station, site D. Site A is at Halava District Park. Those are all positive for PFAS. And of the type that's used in firefighting foam potentially. So we just want the Navy, the regulators to require the Navy to do more extensive testing, put in more monitor wells here, complete the groundwater flow model, and share that information with us. We'll continue to put in more monitor wells and continue to test and share that data with them. But I felt necessary that the community needed to see this. More questions and answers at this point.
Okay, thank you for that. Tons of information. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Yep, please do.
As you go off the page where the boundaries are being shared, how does your confidence then relate to it being connected back to Red Hill?
It becomes a challenge further away. You know, we looked at this area, and like Aaron mentioned, okay, this Halava Industrial Park, Red Hill was built and completed in 1943. A massive underground fuel storage facility that can store up to 250 million gallons of fuel right above our 100 feet above our aquifer. And look at this area. At that time, there was probably no industrial park in Halava Valley. It was all probably empty land being used by the Navy also. But just on this, circumstantially, it looks like the obvious source that we have to look at is Red Hill. I mean, if they can, anybody can present other information of AFFF or other PFAS containing chemicals being used in this area, we're open to talking to them. But right now, the big gorilla in the room is where all those yellow dots are, yellow circles indicating PFAS detections. That's like the big gorilla in the room right now. And it's the largest underground industrial facility, well, actually, probably in the entire island.
I guess my question is there any like unique chemical signature or?
The PFASs that we're picking up are similar to what?
Yeah, the PFASs that we're picking up in our monitor wells as well as our own wells is similar to the ones that's being found on the property in the Navy's monitor wells. They're also similar to the types that were used in the firefighting foam formulations, both the legacy ones and the more recent ones.
Has there been any update to the UH tracer study?
We're going to be meeting with them to try to get an update. There's nothing released. The tracer study continues, and I think it should be continued. We're talking to the Red Hill VI, which is now part of DLNR. They did get up to $8 million in funding from the state legislature last session to actually, we're going to suggest that they continue to fund the dye tracer study. We're also testing for the dye in our monitor wells and drinking water wells that are running or shut off. But the last information we got seemed to that I think the norm that everybody thought was flow from Mauka to Makai, which is from the right side to the left side of the top right corner toward the left bottom corner, that was a conventional. But when we heard from the UH and talking to them, we try to meet with them monthly, that actually some of that dye started to go inland up the hill, or which is more consistent with our concern from almost day one, the northwesterly or cross Halava Valley flow direction.
The challenge with the faded transport, it could take way longer to transport, right? You haven't felt pumpage of wells, you can't get like the true gradient of where the chemical would go. You know, that lava shot is off, right?
Yeah, and one thing is the PFAS maybe is the ideal tracer, very water soluble. It doesn't break down, and now we can detect it in parts per trillion range. So it's going to go with the groundwater. So this is a part of the challenges. Site L4, Irwin, that's going to be a proposed well that we're going to be drilling
there too.
up at our water tank site. So but we need more wells in that whole area where you don't see any dots, red dots. The quarry area is like this big black hole of lack of information. I understand it's hard to, in an active quarry, to actually put a monitor well, but unfortunately, it's this huge gap of knowledge. Yeah.
A couple of questions. I know we want more monitoring wells. What is the cost of a monitor? I know it's like cheaper than the PFAS treatment. And then if in an ideal world, like how many monitoring wells would we want?
Oh, right now it's about $2 to $3 million. Well, $2 to $3 million. And then in terms of the number, 100.
Yeah, that was a number we threw on the table from the beginning.
Okay, thanks.
They really concentrate. If you look at the red dots, they represent monitor well locations. On Navy property, there's a large number of dots there. What's missing is dots to the south, dots to the northwest. There needs to be more monitor wells offsite. And then the sampling frequency, it should be sampled, every 2 weeks at least?
At least.
Because we can then see variations in concentrations, or over time, you might see different types of PFAS being found. The problem with this facility was a petroleum facility, but ultimately, I think it's now a forever chemical issue here, a PFAS issue that's staring us in the face right now.
Okay. Anything else? Thanks for the robust discussion. Thank you, or I appreciate that. Next item for information, status update of groundwater levels at all index stations. Chair recognizes Barry. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. We have only one aquifer index station in low groundwater condition for June, and that's Kaimuki, which is a caution. The pumpage is slowly rising to 136 million gallons per day, but that's still under the 5-month moving average. The rainfall index for June is 136% of normal, and the 5-month moving average is 204%. So quite a lot of rainfall that is still averaging in to those numbers. There's no drought monitor conditions on Oahu, and the National Weather Service is forecasting above normal precipitation through August now. And so if you can scroll to that's the rainfall. So yeah, the 5-month moving average quite high. I haven't seen it that high for a while, but a lot of that ran off as well. So, but anyway, that's a good sign. Anything above the red line, and there's a 136 is below the 5 last year and the 5-year on the average. And that's my report. We're in good shape.
Any questions for Barry? Thank you for bringing all that rain our way, Barry. Appreciate that very much.
More coming, huh?
I never complain about the rains.
Yeah, except when it cuts into your tea time.
I love the rain.
That won't stop them.
Very good. Thank you very much. And finally, I believe we have our water main repair report. Chair recognizes Daniel Lee.
Good afternoon, board chair and board members.
Oh, we have show and tell too today.
Show and tell, you want to do show and tell first, or you want to do your main break?
No, do your thing, do your
All
thing.
right. So. I have the evaluation leak detect, the main break and leak detection reports for the month of June. So we had 29 main breaks, 10 were leaks, 19 were breaks, and there's 0 damages. Leak detection report, we had 44 points of interest, found 32 leaks. 2 were main leaks, 25 were meter coupling leaks, 3 leaks on the customer side, and 2 service leaks. Any questions on my reports?
Questions? No. Show and tell.
Oh yeah, show and tell. So shortly after 4 a.m. on Sunday morning, someone hit the fire hydrant on the corner of Kaomoku and Youngshu. HFD was the first to respond. They tried to isolate the fire hydrant and pulled out our stem. So this is the operating stem and valve packing assembly for a 6-inch isolation valve for fire hydrant. I haven't had a chance to look at the body of the valve, so I don't know exactly what happened, but it looks like maybe on the body, the flange was cracked, and as they turned it, it broke off and pulled out. Crew spent most of the day making repairs late into the night. Created some traffic. I guess everyone heard about the traffic. The valve was installed in 1975. It was a lead joint valve. They had to cut and splice out MJ valve.
So we wanted to pass it around, but we can't pick it up.
It's pretty heavy. I mean, you
can get hurt.
turns. We're trying to bring different things.
As long as you can carry it.
As long as I can carry it and fit it in my truck, I bring it down.
Okay, any questions or comments? You may come up and look at the piece of pipe valve later on. All right. Okay, thank you for your.
Pass along our thanks to the working crews.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you very much. Okay. I believe that brings us to the end of our regular meeting today. We do have a couple of items to discuss in executive session. There aren't any objections from the board. Chair will entertain a motion to exit regular session and move into executive session. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are suspended on regular sessions, moving to exec session. We'll give you a few minutes to change the room over. So we're in regular session. We have 3 items that require board action from the executive session. Our first action item is approval of the minutes of the executive session held on June 22nd, 2026. Chair will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second, roll call vote, please.
Speaking Chair, Vice Chair, Jonathan Conchero.
Aye.
Board Member Nolly Huapi,
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Lopolo,
Aye.
Member Darius Chan,
Aye.
Chair Lance Goldman.
Aye,
Chair motion passes with 5 ayes.
thank you very much. Action item number 2, to authorize the proposed settlement of civil number 1 CCV 26 0000693, City and County of Honolulu, acting by and through the Board of Water Supply versus Hawaii MMGD, a Delaware Limited Liability Company, formerly known as MMGD LLC, a Maryland Limited Liability Company, and James Campbell Company LLC, a Delaware Limited Liability Company, relating to the acquisition of lot 3164 Olai Street by eminent domain, tax map key 9-1-031, parent 008, and to request authorization to make a settlement offer. Chair will entertain a motion to pass the resolution.
So move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Jonathan Panachero.
Aye.
Board Member Naomi.
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Locola.
Aye.
Board Member Darian Chan.
Aye.
And Chair Lance Bowman.
Aye.
Chair motion passes 5 ayes.
Mahalo. Our final action item to authorize the proposed settlement of claim number 24-037B relating to property damages at 2036 Pauoa Road, Honolulu, Hawaii, following an 8-inch cast iron main break at 2106 Kaneali'i Avenue, Honolulu, Hawaii on December 6, 2023. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Again.
Motion and second. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Jonathan Panachero.
Aye.
Board Member Naomi Anthony.
Aye.
Board Member Jeffrey Locola.
Aye.
Board Member Darian Chan.
Aye.
And Chair Lance Bowman.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 5 ayes.
Thank you very much. I believe that brings us to the end of our regular board agenda today. If there is no other business before the body, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
Is a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and an enthusiastic second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Hearing none, we are in adjournment. Thank you very much.